Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is Kid Nate of BloodyElbow.com, joined once again by Zane Simon. Where's the echo coming from?
No idea.
Oh, well, that's annoying. Anyway, it's the 6th round of UFC 196. Conor McGregor upset by Nate Diaz, submitted in the 2nd round. Holm upset by Miesha Tate, submitted in the 5th round. Zane, talk about it.
Man, it was... I called the Miesha Tate one, so I'm happy about that. But if you're the UFC right now, I mean, I guess on the one hand, maybe Ronda Rousey rushes back. And on the other hand, you just lost Conor McGregor to a dude that you have never been happy about having to promote, ever.
Yes.
And I don't, obviously I don't really think Conor McGregor ends up being diminished by this, just because stars... the way that he is a star, they are so rarely diminished by anything. John Jones is getting more pop right now than it feels like he's ever got before. And, he's been through career hell and high water. Ronda Rousey's
never lost a fight.
But Ronda Rousey's still all over the place.
Yes, she absolutely is. And although, a fight she's won twice against Miesha Tate, will obviously have less intrigue than a rematch against the woman who beat her, but it gets possibly one more fight out of Ronda Rousey than the UFC could expect to otherwise. Before this, they had no way could they sell Miesha Tate Ronda Rousey fight. That would have been, people would have been furious. They would have demanded the Holly Holm rematch.
They tried, and they ended up with Holly Holm. Ronda Rousey won because they were like, okay, Miesha Tate Ronda Rousey 3, and everybody's like, what the fuck is this? So they...
Yep, they had to back down. But let's talk about that main event. Oh, my God. Conor McGregor came out looking good, aggressive, fast. He was hitting Nate Diaz. The thing is, it takes a lot more than just a few punches to finish Nate Diaz. I mean, he basically whipped his ass for a round and a quarter.
Yep.
But once Nate hurt him back...
I mean, just the Diaz brothers physiologically, I think it's something in their head shape, to be honest, because they have these, like, big, huge heads. Something in their head shape. Their chins are just unbelievable, like unbreakably unbelievable. And McGregor fought like he couldn't get hurt. And I was watching this, and it started out every time McGregor landed, he landed a huge power shot. Every time he missed, he got clipped a couple times with a couple little punches. Then as things went on, he'd land a power shot. Nate Diaz would roll away from the next shot that came after it and clip him with a couple little punches. And just in every exchange, McGregor would get hit a couple times, even when he was landing big. And eventually, he wasn't landing, and he was still getting clipped over and over again. And that's exactly how the Diaz brothers beat you.
Yes, exactly. McGregor fought as if he had never had zero awareness of the Josh Thompson win over Nate Diaz, of the Carlos Condit win over Nick Diaz. The book has been written on how to beat the Diaz brothers. It's leg kicks and circling away. McGregor fell into the old game that BJ Penn and so many others who've lost to the Diaz brothers have fallen into, of trading punches with the Diaz brothers, thinking, I'm landing the harder shots here. I have nothing to worry about. So he pity-patted me a couple times. So what? I cracked him. Soon, like you said, next time he glanced him and gets pity-patted a couple times. Then he misses and gets pity-patted. Then he gets pity-patted. Then he gets cracked. And then he gets cracked again. And once he was hurt, Diaz is a killing machine.
Yep.
And just went for the finish, beat him up on the feet. Then McGregor, like Diaz's line after the fight, after they get hurt, everybody's a wrestler all of a sudden. I never get to knock guys out. And that was awesome. And all of Diaz's post-fights comments were awesome, actually.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the first thing he said was like, I'm not surprised, motherfucker. It's just, I mean, why do you expect him to be surprised that he won a fight? These people live on confidence.
Exactly. And now the UFC is stuck with Nate Diaz in an elevated superstar capacity when this is a guy who's still lost 3 out of his last 6 fights. This is not a guy that's heading to a title fight or anything. And he's a huge pain in the ass.
Is now. I mean, he's probably in the title fights the same way Nick Diaz was when he got that one off against GSP off a loss to Carlos Condit. I mean,
yes.
The thing with the Diaz brothers has always been that they have a personality that I think the UFC has never wanted to promote at all. They have had zero interest in promoting these not at all clean cut, not at all well, like nicely spoken, not at all timely and predictable fighters, they don't want to promote them. But
Nope.
the
But they've made a
moment
lot of
they
money
get,
promoting them.
the moment they get big money, these are dudes that people just line up around the block to watch. So it's always just sort of like holding them back as much as possible, because the moment they get any momentum, you have to start booking them in these huge fights. You have to start depending on somebody who might not show up for any press conferences.
Yes, yes. Now Nate's always been a little bit more reliable than Nick, maybe
Yep.
quite a bit more reliable than Nick, but nonetheless, he's been pretty vocal critic of Dana White and the UFC. So the Fertitta brothers can't be happy with this one. They booked this on short notice. They wanted to keep the maximum impact. They couldn't afford to take a step back with McGregor. They couldn't book McGregor against, say, Frankie Edgar or somebody that would be less excited. I mean, they should at least be happy that it wasn't Frankie Edgar that beat McGregor, because that was a very real live possibility as well, although Edgar was hurt. But,
yeah. This is at least like Nate Diaz. Like I say, they can sell pay-per-views off Nate Diaz.
yes.
They've come out of this with 2 stars instead of 1. It's just one that they didn't ever want.
Yeah. And Misha Tate, not a star on her own, although she has, a couple million Facebook followers. But Holly Holm definitely had skipped to the front of the line, and it was a possibility that Holly Holm, I don't know that she would ever take on Rousey-esque dimensions, but that she could have evolved into a pay-per-view draw on her own. Now, this division still, frankly, rotates in orbit around Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, I mean, now you have 2 women who are lined up as Ronda Rousey opponents rather than somebody with a bunch of momentum ready to face Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
Even off a win for Holm, Rousey's still the one that, she's still getting all the media attention. She's still the one that the media is interested in. And yeah, I mean, the attention for Holm, like this week, we could not talk about Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz enough. Holly Holm and Misha Tate was kind of like, they're there. That's great.
Yep. And the UFC's had a great 2015, possibly their best year ever, but that was completely on the backs of Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, and to a much lesser extent, John Jones, who was taken out because of criminal mischief early in 2015. Now Jones is coming back. So the first 2 months of the year, the UFC had a complete drought because Robbie Lawler's not a draw at welterweight. They had a heavyweight title fight fall through, and then here they come March. Finally, they get Conor McGregor, and they put Holly Holm on the same card. So you didn't even get to test Holly Holm and Misha Tate on their own as a draw. That they kind of blinked there, but they put everything into this card. I don't know how much the Holm Tate fight added, like you say, to the draw, and I really do wonder how much McGregor is going to be diminished by this, because he is going to be physically diminished. Getting knocked out like that takes a toll on you. Now, it might not take a huge toll right away, but
yeah. I mean, everybody gets knocked out, so everybody at some point is diminished by a knockout. Like that's part of fight. And he didn't even he got choked out. So
yeah, but he got cracked. He got cracked and hurt and got choked out.
I think that he will be, I mean, he's just got the kind of personality that he will always draw a ton of eyes, and he just doesn't, he's not a welterweight.
It's easy enough for him to move back down, if not to featherweight, at least down to lightweight. I still think there's a great deal of interest in a Conor McGregor Rafael dos Anjos fight. Although, again, if you're McGregor, don't you want to pick up a win? I mean,
yeah. And the question is, if you want to pick up a win, do you go down to featherweight to fight Frankie Edgar to do it?
That's risky. That's risky, and
he's the title holder, and that would be the next step. If he's not gonna, he can't. If he's not going to belt hop and go back and fight RDA, then he has to be down. Like
defending his title at featherweight. Yep. It's a tough position he's painted himself into. Be very interesting to see how he recovers. I thought his post-fight speech was classy and appropriate, and the bit about I wasn't efficient, Nate was efficient. Good job, Nate. I mean, that was very classy, especially for McGregor. And it's a pretty smart analysis of the fight. He didn't fight a smart strategy. He played right into Nate's hands, and didn't realize it until he got hurt. Like he thought that he was winning that fight all the way up until
he was. That's the problem. I mean, that's always been the thing with the Diaz brothers, and this is one of those things I wondered about. I had to pick McGregor because he just had so much momentum behind him, and it just, But the thing with, I had this idea, like he fights with so much confidence, and and zero regard for defense. Even in past fights, even against Chad Mendez, he was just like, okay, I'll stand in front of you, let you bomb away on me, and I'll hurt you worse, and you'll be forced to crumble. And the Diaz thing is that they lace you with one shot at some point, and that just changes everything.
Yep. And once you're hurt, then they pour it on, and the volume becomes a very different. It's a very different proposition to trade punches with the Diaz or come in and out of contact with the Diaz as it is to stand in front of a Diaz when you're hurt or stunned, and they are pouring it on you, body shots, head shots, just punches and bunches over and over again. The pressure never relents. You don't get a chance to breathe, and that's exactly where McGregor found himself. And dove in for a takedown, and I knew as soon as McGregor shot for a takedown, and a pretty piss poor one at that, that you knew he was hurt and in deep trouble. And Diaz is a killer on the ground, didn't dick around at all, just got on top of him, beating the piss out of him. When McGregor rolled to protect himself from the ground and pound, boom, he's on him with the rear naked choke, gets a tap quick. Holly Holm was far grittier, I have to say, in the second round when Miesha Tate was choking her out. Holly Holm fought and fought and fought and wriggled and scrunched.
Holly Holm wasn't like nearly
She
KO.
wasn't
She was
no. Yeah, Miesha Tate didn't hurt her on the feet at all. So, yeah, different situation, but still, Holly Holm, very impressive defense in the second round. But in the fifth round, Miesha Tate just went for it, and Holly, there was very little Holm could do about it.
Same thing it was kind of the same thing as the second. It's just you can only do that so often. Is that Holm has the modern MMA thing that you see a lot these days, which is I can't be on my back because I will lose rounds, lose points if I'm on my back. So I will get up at all costs, and in doing so, will freely give up my back and my neck.
Yes.
And the moment Holly Holm got put on her back, she just rolled through, tried to stand up, and immediately gave up her neck, gave up her back. And Tate is a good enough back take artist that she just jumped on it and sank it in. And you can only give that to somebody like Tate so many times without her finishing it.
Yeah. And Tate, this is a classic stylistic triangle because Holm seems to have a style perfect to shut down Ronda Rousey. Mm-hmm. Ronda Rousey seems to have a style perfectly designed to shut down Miesha Tate. And Miesha Tate has a style that obviously gives Holly Holm a great deal of trouble. So it's a classic rock, paper, scissors MMA trifecta. And that's fun. And hopefully Ronda Rousey will come back and play out the string. Like fight Tate one more time, presumably beat her, and then get that rematch with Holly Holm. And then as, for Nate Diaz, who should he fight now? Should he jump ahead of the line for a welterweight title shot?
Not at welterweight. I think he should go back to lightweight.
And fight Rafael Dos Anjos. Should he be first in line for a title shot against Rafael Dos Anjos? He was nowhere in the title picture before this.
He was nowhere in the title picture, and Dos Anjos just beat the piss out of him so badly. Yes. Which makes because I feel like that would make the most sense. Nate has never been a competitive welterweight. Every time he's tried it, he's always been a terrible welterweight. And so the idea of him staying up, it doesn't make sense to me. I guess my feeling would be that he should drop down to lightweight and maybe fight the Pettis Barboza winner or Ferguson Nurmagomedov winner or loser. Just like somebody right in that top of the lightweight division, put him in a big fun fight. Headline.
The problem is Conor McGregor immediately becomes a non-factor in the lightweight title picture. He can't. It's hard for Conor McGregor to demand a title shot over Nate Diaz. Whereas if Diaz jumps up to welterweight, then you clear that obstacle out of the way. You can immediately book McGregor versus Dos Anjos, give Nate a title shot against Robbie Lawler, whether he deserves it or not or has any chance, and get him out of the way. Like if you're
I don't think the UFC is going to let McGregor take that RDA fight now. I don't think they give it to him.
You think they'd book him against Frankie Edgar and risk really losing the franchise?
I think they do. I think that Frankie Edgar at this point looks like a safer bet than RDA.
Yeah, quite possibly. Both guys look. McGregor obviously looks very vulnerable in humans. So, yeah, that's quite possibly the smart play. But man, yeah, like you say, the UFC went into tonight with two big stars and came out with two big stars with losses. And maybe maybe Nate Diaz. Definitely more people saw Nate Diaz than ever seen him before.
Yeah, I
And
think
he's
more
a very
people
compelling
catch on
figure.
to that.
Yeah, and so of course, had McGregor beaten Nate Diaz, that would have set up a Nick Diaz fight, which would have been even more bananas. And as is, I don't know. I'd love to see a rematch between Nate and Conor too. That would be an entirely pointless but fun thing. But let's run through the rest of the card. We had three other fights on the main card. Ilir Latifi took a unanimous decision over John Vellante in a pretty tedious fight with a couple of good suplexes.
Latifi he's slowly becoming defensively sound enough that he can put to use the fact that he's an impossible ball of muscle, but that doesn't make him an otherwise exciting fighter. He's either going to knock you out or he's the kind of guy who lands one punch a minute. So if he's not KOing you with that, you're watching him grind out one strike per minute.
Yeah, and lots of cage clinching and the occasional throw. The suplexes were sweet. I have to say, like my wife watched this fight first time she's watched fights in ages, and she was like, "Well, the highlights made it look like there was actually some entertainment in that fight." But
anytime if you've ever watched any training footage of Latifi, he practices that throw over and over and over again. So the moment he's got himself locked on your back, you're going for a ride. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, there's a suplex. And then Corey Anderson took what I thought was a fairly inexplicable unanimous decision over Tom Lawler. Not so much the unanimous decision, but that two of the judges scored all 3 rounds for Anderson when Tom Lawler basically beat the brakes off him in the first round. It was an easy 10-8 round for Lawler.
I didn't see it as a 10-8 round because I thought Lawler hurt him early and then slowly lost momentum so that by the end of the round, Anderson was in the fight. He didn't win the round, but he was in the fight.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
And then I thought Anderson won 2 and 3, and it just seemed like a perfectly clear 29-28. I don't understand how you don't give Lawler the first when, all things being relatively equal, he hurt Anderson really badly.
Yeah. He put a cracking on him, came right out. But like you say, Anderson did not turn it around, but defended himself by the end of the first round. And I mean, he was wobbled twice, seriously wobbled.
Yeah.
And then came out. I thought he was pretty dominant in the second and third and used his wrestling to get ground control to totally ice it. And then the opener on the pay-per-view, Amanda Nunez beat Valentina Shevchenko by unanimous decision. I think everybody saw that Shevchenko took the third round, and had it gone 5 rounds, I think she would have gotten the finish. But Nunez beat the piss out of her on the ground in the second round, and I thought edged her in the first.
Yeah, I mean, Shevchenko, the problem with Shevchenko is that her best win before Kaufman is Jan Finney. Like, she does not have that much experience against tough UFC level women's MMA fighters. And I realize that UFC level is a very subjective term there, but, Amanda Nunez is a legit top 5 women's bantamweight at this point. And it is a level of athlete that Shevchenko has never faced in MMA, and it just showed. Shevchenko doesn't have quite the work rate, and she doesn't have the KO power, so she really has to have the work rate if she's going to win fights. She has to be out there outworking somebody all round. Otherwise, it's kind of the Michael Bisping thing, where she can be doing really good for a while and then just get hulked to the ground and beat up.
Yep. And that's pretty much what happened to her against Nunez. So, and then in the Fox Sports 1 prelims, Sierra Baharazada submitted Brandon Thatch. Thatch looked tough early, but Baharazada figured out pretty quick he couldn't wrestle and started taking him down, and is an aggressive guy when he's on top.
That is the worst I've ever seen Brandon Thatch look by a mile. He looked better getting knocked down and choked out by Gunnar Nelson, honestly.
Yeah, Thatch is making backwards progress.
Sierra Baharazada is about the last fighter I expect to just be able to wrestle somebody through the canvas.
Yeah.
He's the classic sprawl and brawl slugger. Like, this is a dude who will just go out, swinging haymakers all fight. And Thatch had no grappling, no wrestling, no cardio, and got lit up inside in the clinch even.
Yep.
So it was just like when he's at range landing big shots, he's dominating. Every other part of the fight, he's getting totally washed.
Yeah, and by the third round, he couldn't take any more, and Barazada got an arm triangle choke in
His
4
first
minutes.
submission since 2007.
Yes, yes, and then the first time in UFC. So yeah, I mean it was not impressive from Brandon Thatch. Then you had welterweights. Nordine Taleb knocked out Eric Silva in the second round. Taleb looked crisp. I mean, and Silva
looked like Silva.
Yeah, he looked sloppy and aggressive, and he paid for it. Got a kick caught and got cracked, and that was that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where he's slowly but surely losing to a lower and lower level of competition. He's, it started out with, well, he DQ'd against Carlo Prater, but it started out with John Fitch and Dong Young Kim and Matt Brown, and now it's Neil Magny, and then it's Nordine Taleb, and it's just slowly going to be inching his way out of the competitive end of that division.
Yep, that's what's happening. And then you had middleweights in a battle of Brazilians. Victor Miranda knocked out Marcelo Guimaraes, technical knockout, 2 minutes, second round, minute 9 seconds. Guimaraes, was dominating the grappling early. Miranda dominated the striking, and it won out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say Guimaraes dominated the grappling. He just pushed him against the cage a lot. He didn't have a good takedown game at all, so he was just kind of stuck trying to hug him, and Miranda's too dangerous for that. You can't just let him have open opportunities to throw strikes at you all the time without you answering anything back.
Yep, and that was that. So big win for Miranda, a young kid. Looking forward to seeing more out of him. Then you had featherweight.
No. Miranda's 36.
Miranda's 36? Oh,
yes. He's been fighting in MMA since 2003.
Yeah, so just more random garbage fights on the card for no reason. Oh. All right, and speaking of random garbage fights, you had Darren Elkins dominate Chaz Skelly, which that was a big one between you and Conor. So
yes, it was, and Darren Elkins is my favorite kind of random garbage fighter. I love him because, I mean, his style is such a mess, but he's just one of those dudes that it looks so unfun to fight him. It looks like just the worst, most miserable experience of your life.
Yes, and that's when you realize the pig likes it. It's just messy and dirty and nasty and awful, and he inflicts it on everybody he gets in the cage with. And Chaz Skelly didn't have an answer for it, and even took a 30-26 score on one.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Elkins. People were picking Skelly here, but when you got Darren Elkins fighting Darren Elkins, you go with the original. You go with the OG Darren Elkins. That is
exactly. And so then you had 3 fights on Fight Pass. Diego Sanchez decision. Jim Miller, another fight that takes us nowhere. Miller was putting some wins together.
That makes me so. I feel so many bad ways about that. Watching Diego Sanchez get a legit decision win in the UFC now is just, I don't know. It's depressing.
Yeah. It seemed to be a stylistic mismatch for Miller. Like, it seemed like he didn't really have an answer for Sanchez, and that was not what I expected to see.
Yeah, that's not what I expected at all either. I mean, it's not like Sanchez isn't a very known factor. Like Miller, even it's what you're getting when you get Diego Sanchez in there with you. This is a dude Miller has watched him fight for his entire career. Diego Sanchez has been in the UFC since before Miller started training MMA.
Yes, forever. And this was the same game. I mean, Diego even got to show off his wrestling in his top game, which we haven't seen in ages. And so he took a unanimous decision.
Miller is falling off the map in a hurry.
Yeah. And Diego is stubbornly sticking around. So, So maybe they booked Diego Sanchez versus Nate Diaz. They could get a pay-per-view headliner out of that, huh?
That would, you know what? Fuck it. Do it. I say do it. I say Diego Sanchez keeps winning. Just give him some stupid fights that make no sense.
Yeah, and make money off it. I mean, once upon a time, Diego.
People still love him. He's one of the few fighters that people will come to the BE Twitter account when I'm running it during event and be like, "Tell me when Diego Sanchez is fighting. I need to know."
Yes, people love him.
Him and Frank Mir, and I'm always like, "What the fuck? Really? These are the dudes that people are still like." And it would be probably Chris Lieben if Chris Lieben was still in the UFC too.
Lieben, yeah. A sad story. All right, so we had two more fights. Justin Sego dominated. Justin Salas got the TKO, 4 minutes 31 seconds of the first round. Pretty impressive performance from Sego.
Yeah, I like his game. He's got a funky little like grappling, outside kicking game going on. Decent athlete, good grappler, mixes everything up well. Good wrestler too. Fun fighter.
Yep. And speaking of fun fighter, featherweight Trudeau Ishihara knocked out Julian Rossa in the 34 seconds of the second round. Very impressive UFC debut from this kid. A total character. What did he say at the end of the fight? Love me, bitches? Is that what he said?
I think he said, something like that.
Love me, bitches. I believe, and he has a dyed blonde afro. So a Japanese guy with a blonde afro, always a treat. And fun style, a little bit of a counter striker, but crisp striking and aggressive as all hell.
Yeah, he's got a style that actually, for a Japanese fighter, he's got a style that actually works in UFC, like in UFC MMA. He's his problem in the past has been that he just takes time off in fights where he'll throw a few strikes and then sit back and watch and throw a few and sit back and watch. But it seems like he's learning and he's upping his output and he's staying more consistent and he hits hard. And, he's like a top 10, top 15 level athlete. So it's really just about him getting the right training and the right time to develop and rounding out his game because the tools are there. The basics are there.
Yeah, and my mistake. This is actually his second UFC fight. He fought at UFC Road to Japan at the bottom of the Barnett versus Nelson Fight Night card. It got a split decision draw against Mizuto Hirota, so made zero impression on me in that fight.
It was a great fight. It was a great draw. Even it was a clean draw, no point deductions. They scored a 10-10 round.
That's a very Japanese MMA kind of thing to do, and so. One of the reasons Japanese fighters for years couldn't fight themselves out of the mire because they were always fighting each other to ties. And so maybe Ishihara can put something together. It would be fun to see. It's been a long time since we've had an exciting new Japanese fighter, probably since the flyweight emerged. What's his name? Horiguchi?
Yeah, Horiguchi, yeah.
Yeah. So back to the main event, though. Conor McGregor, a little bit of hubris comes a copper. You jump up 2 weight divisions and you fight a very tough guy in Nate Diaz and you fight a sloppy, aggressive, uncautious fight. Yep. And this is what happens. You get cracked, you get submitted.
And I think the biggest benefit for me here is, I don't care if Conor McGregor is humbled or not. I love watching him. I love hearing him. I love his whole game. It's great.
Yes.
And I don't think this gets him less pull out there. But I will say this will probably change his perception with fans because he had this perception that he was absolutely unbeatable.
Yes.
And this changes that. That will go away. Now, what that means after that, I still think he'll draw a ton, but it does change that narrative of he's a man that cannot be beaten, and especially his whole The Secret thing, where everything he envisions comes true.
The law of attraction, yes. Sorry to tell you, kids, that stuff is bullshit. And there you go, Conor McGregor. Sorry,
living proof now that is BS is that Conor McGregor, I'm sure, absolutely envisioned himself beating Nate Diaz.
yes. If he didn't, very, very irresponsible on his part. So you can't blame The Secret. You can only blame the execution of it. Anyway, and Miesha Tate upset Holly Holm, sets herself up to welcome Ronda Rousey back to the UFC when and if the former champion's ready to return. So a big night for MMA. I don't know where it leaves us. We might be worse off than we were before, but Nate Diaz, I love him. MMA fans love him. I think a whole new generation of casual fans saw Nate Diaz at his very best. That was a very, very Diaz brothers performance there. Gritty, ballsy, back and forth, take some to give some, and keep giving some. I mean, it's like the Diaz they're like, yeah, you hit me twice as hard as I did, but I hit you twice as much. And then the next time and the next time, and it just adds up. And if you play their game, you probably lose. Conor McGregor ignored the book on beating the Diaz brothers and paid the price. Holly Holm, I don't know really what she could have done differently other than really be much more aggressive, which Miesha Tate wasn't really giving her the opportunity to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And this is where I'm just really quick. Holly Holm did not sandbag her way to Ronda Rousey. Holly Holm fights the way she fights. She did not fight exciting fights up to Ronda Rousey because given a fight when she's not given a fighter with unchecked confidence in her poor striking, she doesn't have the opportunity to throw huge, really great counter shots. That's just not who she is. She's not an open up and really create a huge lead kind of striker. She's not Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
No. She's a counter striker. A lot like Anderson Silva, she likes to feast on a dummy that's charging forward, throwing caution to the wind.
Yeah, and so Tate being on her back foot and all that, any fighter that approaches Holly Holm on their back foot like that, even if Holm wins, it's not going to be this amazing spectacle of knockout violence. It's going to be the Marion Renault fight, where she just kind of grinds her way to a slow point kickboxing decision.
Yep. That's the Holly Holm game if you don't play right into her hands like Ronda Rousey did. And Tate, for 3 rounds she couldn't get out of that game.
Yep.
But there were 2 rounds when she did, the second round and then the 5th round. Second round she couldn't quite ice it. 5th round she knew she had to get the finish, and she did. Choked Holly Holm unconscious. Like when Holm, the last seconds of Holm's consciousness, she was throwing punches at ghosts.
Yep.
And that was sad to see, man. That the brain is doing weird things when somebody's being choked by somebody behind him and they're throwing with evil intent in front of him. And next second she was unconscious. So technical submission win for Miesha Tate, 3 minutes 30 seconds of the 5th round. Definitely a record for the latest finish in a women's bantamweight title fight. But we've seen other finishes in the 5th round in other title fights before. But anyway, that's our night. Amazing night. UFC 196. I don't know when we'll be back. There'll be another UFC. Mark Hunt versus Frank Mir is coming up, but that's nothing compared to this. So anyway, great night. Follow us on Twitter @KidNate, @TheZaneSimon. Read us on BloodyElbow.com. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes, and you can get the audio without the ugly. What other plugs am I missing? Is that it?
Knuckle Up. All our non-event shows next week, all that stuff. So tune in for that.
Yep. Click the subscribe to MMANation.com in the corner. So, adios, MMA aficionados. Thanks, Zane. We'll see you next time.